My name is Rory Michaels. I run the graveyard shift at a radio station. It squats like a lonely metal box in the middle of the Arizona desert. Not the pretty kind of desert with the painted cliffs and tour buses, mind you. This is just heat, scrub brush, and an endless flat horizon. The town we technically serve is 2 hours away, and most nights, I'm not even sure the signal reaches that far. I didn't take this job for the music. Half the time it's 70s soft rock and AM gold, the kind of stuff your uncle gets drunk to at Thanksgiving. And I'm pretty sure the only people listening are either half-asleep truckers or retirees who never figured out Spotify. I'm not even here for the journalism. Not really. I'm here because strange things happen out here. Lights in the sky. Unmarked roads that show up on no map. Old stories whispered by the people who've lived too long out here in the middle of nowhere. The kind of stuff that doesn't make it into newspapers because no one wants to risk sounding crazy. That's the stuff I've always been chasing. When I was 10, I stayed up all night cataloging supernatural sightings in our county library. I memorized cryptid classifications instead of baseball stats. I convinced myself my house was haunted just so I had an excuse to camp out in the hallway with a tape recorder. My parents didn't love that. They kept telling me I'd grow out of it, that I'd stop filling notebooks with blurry photographs and hearsay. But I never did. I just got better at hiding it. By the time high school came around, I figured out how to make it look like a phase. I joined the yearbook team so I could sneak into the darkroom. I wrote essays on historical architecture so I could visit condemned buildings without raising eyebrows. I stopped talking about the occult out loud, but I never stopped writing about it. I kept everything in old spiral notebooks I hid under my mattress. My parents thought I was finally coming around. They wanted me to go into something practical, engineering, maybe, or law. But all I wanted was to get closer to the edge of the map, you know? So I told them I was majoring in journalism, which, is technically true. What I didn't tell them was that I picked the program at a college with a folklore archive and a decent paranormal research club. I spent more time in the university basement flipping through microfilm than I did in lectures. I interviewed conspiracy theorists and amateur demonologists for class projects. I wrote a paper once comparing cult behavior to early fan forums. Got an A. Got some weird looks, too. After I graduated, I knew I wasn't cut out for cable news or lifestyle columns. And I wasn't trying to land a book deal exposing corruption or reinventing the wheel. I wanted a mic. I wanted a quiet place where I could speak into the dark and maybe, just maybe, something strange would speak back. That's how I found the station. I answered a job listing that had no company name, no salary listed, no contact number. Got a P.O. box and 4 words: late night radio host. I applied right away. A week later, I got an envelope in the mail with a station badge and a set of keys. There was a note attached that said, "Start Monday. Don't be late." And now, most nights, I sit behind the mic while the desert hums outside. I queue up tracks. I flip through the little notebook I keep beside the console, filled with sightings, rumors, things people swear they saw. And when the moment feels right, I lean in, press the button, and start talking. Welcome to radio station KMCR, out in the middle of nowhere. Oh yeah, I should probably tell you about the only other radio host in this joint, and maybe a little bit more about the station itself. My radio co-host is named Christian. He works the same shift I do, overnight, and he's the only person I ever really see here. We share the same small control room, the same crusty coffee machine, and the same busted vending machine. Most nights, it's just the two of us sitting a few feet apart with our own microphones and mismatched mugs, trying to stay awake and make the show sound halfway decent. Christian's about my age, early 20s, maybe a year older, but you'd never know it. He's got this nervous energy, like he's always expecting someone to tap him on the shoulder and tell him he's doing something wrong. I think that's why we get along. He doesn't make fun of my weird interest. He doesn't ask too many questions when I go off on one of my rants about haunted hallways or Cold War mind control experiments. Sometimes he just nods and lets me talk. Sometimes he laughs. Sometimes he looks uncomfortable, but he stays. That's more than most people. The station itself is called KMCR, but that doesn't really mean anything. It's not affiliated with a network. It's not part of any big media group. It's just a little building made of faded stucco and heat-warped glass sitting at the edge of a long, cracked service road. There's no sign out front. No one's ever dropped by to ask for a tour. It feels like it's been forgotten on purpose. Inside, the layout's simple. 2 main recording rooms, Studio A and B, a narrow hallway lined with shelves of old vinyl, and an office space nobody uses. There's a break room with a fridge that makes a high-pitched noise when the compressor kicks in, and a storage closet that never seems to stay closed. Someone's rigged the front door with a keypad, but the code never changes. There's a cleaning crew that comes by during the day, but I only ever see them after lunch. There are maybe 20 people on payroll, if you count the janitors and the guy who fixes the tower when it gets hit by lightning. I've never met most of them. I don't think Christian has either. The only real structure we have is this thing called the AM show. It's a loose segment that kicks off around 1 a.m. and runs until we get bored or the next batch of songs need queuing up. Officially, it's supposed to be a casual hour of commentary. News, politics, entertainment, whatever's trending. Something to make the station feel a bit more alive. Unofficially, it is my favorite part of the night, because it's the only time I get to talk about the stuff I care about. UFOs, government cover-ups, unexplained disappearances, weird calls from listeners who claim they've seen things they can't explain. I steer the conversation there whenever I can. Christian doesn't always follow, but he doesn't steer me away either. He'll chime in now and then, ask a question, or share a weird headline he read earlier. Sometimes we go off on tangents about movies or fast food, but I always find my way back to the strange stuff. There's a rhythm to it now. Christian does the weather and the local updates. I dig into the weird files I keep under the console. We pass the mic back and forth. Some nights we barely talk. Other nights we can't shut up. It just depends on how tired we are and how long the coffee holds out. But tonight, well, I'm wide awake. And I've got a few stories up my sleeve. Just some things that have been happening out here over the past couple months. Odd little moments. Strange sightings. Stuff I've been jotting down in my notebook between song breaks, waiting for the right time to share. Turns out that time is now. So folks, if you're on the road, in the kitchen, lying awake in a dark room with nothing but the hum of your radio for company, this is your heads up. Buckle up. Top off your coffee. We've got a long night ahead. Story 1. I found out about the station's background on my very first day, thanks to Christian, that is. I got there about an hour early. I always do that when I start something new. It helps me settle in and figure out what's what before things actually get going. The sun was still up when I pulled into the lot. The station looked even smaller in person than it had in the photo they mailed with my badge. One-story building, beige stucco that had peeled in spots, antennas leaning at weird angles. There was only one other car in the parking lot. Eventually, I killed the ignition, grabbed my backpack, and went to the front door. The keypad worked on the first try. They'd written the code, 1717, on the back of the ID badge. I thought maybe somebody would be waiting inside, to give me a tour or at least say hello. But the place was empty. Quiet. The control room was down the hall on the left, same as the map they sent. I dropped my stuff, took a look at the schedule, checked the audio levels. Everything seemed fine. No instructions beyond play tracks from the 70s folder and fill airtime with banter. The playlist was already queued up for the night. Someone had set it to auto. I didn't even need to do anything until the AM show kicked in, so I figured I'd make a cup of coffee. There was a coffee machine mentioned in the welcome packet. I looked around the break room first, but all I found was the regular drip pot and a box of sugar packets that had hardened into cubes. Tried a few cupboards, plates, instant noodles, dust. No machine. Eventually, I ducked into the storage closet at the end of the hall. It was barely lit and cluttered with boxes, old cables, spare mic stands, a few busted chairs stacked against the wall. I figured if the machine wasn't there, it was probably gone for good. But while I was crouching down, checking behind a crate labeled miscellaneous tape reels, I saw something wedged behind a cardboard box. It was a photo album. Black cover, no label, just a cheap 3-ring binder with thick plastic sleeves. I brought it out, sat down on the crate, and started flipping through it. The first few pages looked harmless. People smiling in front of the station, a ribbon-cutting photo with a woman holding giant scissors, employees laughing, holding coffee mugs, pointing at soundboards. Everyone wore the same shirt, the Watermelon Company. Big white letters across faded green fabric. I didn't recognize any of them. There were group shots of people standing in the parking lot, potluck tables, birthday cakes, holiday decorations in the break room. It looked like any small office in the 90s or early 2000s. Then I got to the last page. Just one photo. Unlike the others, this one wasn't centered. It'd been shoved into the sleeve sideways, like whoever added it didn't want to look at it for long. It showed a window pane, same kind as the ones in Studio B, and right in the middle of it was what looked like a bloody handprint. It was a bloody goat hoof. The print was smeared, like whatever made it had been moving while it left the mark. I took the album and brought it back to the control room. Christian, who I'd met over the phone the night before, was already there flipping through the log sheet. The other car in the parking lot earlier must have been his. He looked up when I came in, and I said, "Hey, quick question. Did you know we've got some really weird photo albums here?" He raised an eyebrow and asked what kind of weird. I handed him the binder and pointed to the last page. He didn't flip straight to it. He started at the beginning, just like I had. His face was unreadable at first, but then he got to the final photo and his expression changed. He went pale, and then he rubbed the back of his neck like it suddenly itched. "Ah," he said. "Yeah, ah. What am I looking at, man? Some weird prank, like Halloween photo op? What's the story here?" I asked. "All right," he began. "So, rumor has it, the station wasn't just started by a bunch of radio nerds. It was founded by a group. Some say it was a cult." "Okay, you have my full attention," I said. "Well, they call themselves the Watermelon Company. That's why the shirts, I guess. It was a front. Or maybe they were trying to look normal, I don't know, but either way, the idea was they pooled their money together to build the station from scratch," he explained. "Why out here?" I asked. Christian shrugged. "They wanted to be far away, I guess. The story goes that they used the station to broadcast messages, not to regular people, but to other followers. It was like their beacon. They believed in something they called the Mother. I don't know what that means. I don't think anyone does." I pointed to the photo again. "And the goat print?" I asked. He looked at it. I don't know, maybe a ritual? The station's next to what used to be a goat farm. If you look out Studio B's east window, you can still see the old well. A cult with a private radio station in the desert, I began. Man, why didn't they put that in the job listing? Christian gave a short laugh, but he looked uncomfortable. I clapped him on the back and said, well, if it's haunted, at least I know I got the right job. We went quiet after that. Just the playlist humming through the speakers and the soft click of the control board as I leaned back in my chair and looked out toward the well. Things got a whole lot more interesting after that. Story 2. So after that first week, Christian and I settled into a rhythm. We'd clock in around 11:30 p.m., make the coffee, cue up the first block of 70s tracks, and sit back while the night crawled by. Around 1 a.m., we'd kick off the AM show. Some nights we'd talk about movies or weird headlines. Other nights we'd get into stranger territory. Old mysteries, local legends, or listener-submitted stories that felt too odd to be made up. Christian would usually humor me. He'd let me go off on tangents about alien implants or ancient broadcast experiments from the World Wars. He didn't always join in, but he didn't shut it down either. Most nights it was easy. Until the signal started. It was maybe the end of our second week on the job. We were halfway through the show, and I just finished a segment on urban legends that turned out to be marketing stunts. Christian was flipping through the station log when he paused, frowning. "You hear that?" he asked. I pulled off my headphones and listened. The music was still playing, something soft and slow, maybe Fleetwood Mac. But under the track, just barely noticeable, was a faint, broken signal. Didn't sound like anything specific, just noise. Lasted about 10 seconds, then it was gone. Could be interference. Maybe the tower's picking up a bleed from a neighboring frequency, I said. Christian didn't answer right away as he looked at the clock. It was exactly 3:11 a.m. And that would have been it. Just a weird moment. If it hadn't happened again the next night. And the one after that. Every single time, right at 3:11 a.m., we'd get that same broken transmission. Faint, sloppy, like something unfinished. But it was always the same length. It had always ended the same way. With 3 soft thumps. Like someone knocking on a wall or tapping the end of a microphone. I started recording them after the 3rd time. Christian told me not to bother. He said it was probably just an old signal looping back somehow. Maybe a piece of outdated equipment somewhere in town bleeding into our line. He said it wasn't worth thinking about. But I've spent my entire life chasing unexplained signals. I wasn't gonna let this one go. By the 5th night, I had 3 solid recordings. I brought in my old laptop and plugged in the audio files. I slowed them down, reversed them, ran them through filters. Most of it was just noise, but something about the pattern caught my attention. There was a rhythm to it, especially right before the knocking started. So I slowed one of the recordings down to half speed and pushed the gain. And that's when I heard it. Underneath all the noise, buried deep in the distortion, was a voice. It was hard to make out, but I played it again and again. After about 20 minutes, I realized what it was saying. It was repeating the same phrase. "Feed the well." I sat back in my chair and rewound it. Played it again. Same result. Same words. It was clearer now, like my brain had adjusted to the pattern. Christian came back from the break room, just as I was queuing it up again. "You gotta hear this," I said, turning up the volume. He paused by the door. "Is it the signal?" Yeah, I ran it through a filter. Just listen." I hit play. The voice came through again, muffled, but understandable. "Feed the well." Christian stood still for a moment, then stepped forward slowly. He leaned over the laptop and listened until the knock sequence ended. Then he turned and walked out of the room without saying a word. I found him in the hallway a few minutes later, standing with his hands in his pockets, staring out the side window toward the field behind the station. I chose not to comment on how he looked, like he was reevaluating all his life choices. "Is that about the well out back?" I began. "Has to be, right? I mean, that's where the cult stuff supposedly happened. Right where the goats were kept. Right where..." But before I could finish, he cut me off. "Rory, I don't know what it is, but don't chase this," he said. I blinked. "What are you talking about? This could be real EVP, real unexplained signal activity. This could be..." He turned to face me. "No, I mean it. Don't chase this." "Why?" I asked. "Because you don't know what you're messing with. This place has history," he began. "The kind people don't talk about. If someone or something is trying to reach out, maybe we don't want to know what it wants." I didn't know what to say to that. I thought he was exaggerating. I thought maybe he was just spooked. But I could tell it bothered him in a real way. The kind of way you don't learn from movies or stories. It looked like something he'd seen before. Unfortunately, that made me curious. After all, my mother did always say I was stubborn. Over the next few nights, I kept tracking the signal. Every night at 3:11 a.m., without fail, it would start up. 10 seconds of distortion. That strange voice. Then the 3 knocks. Christian started taking his breaks early to avoid hearing it. I stopped mentioning my findings to him altogether. But I couldn't help myself. I was hooked. And then about a week later, the signal changed. It came in stronger. Not the usual faint buzz under the playlist, but loud enough to trip the meters. The board lit up like we'd gotten a real incoming source. It wasn't coming from the satellite feed or our scheduled track list. It was something else entirely. I killed the music to trace it. It was local. Not just local. On site. I locked onto the signal path. It was broadcasting from somewhere just behind the station. The origin point was within meters of the building. I stood up, crossed to the window, and looked out toward the overgrown lot behind the back fence. There was the old well, covered in rusted sheet metal and surrounded by dry weeds. The signal was coming from there. I was right. I couldn't stop thinking about the well. Every time I queued up another track or flipped a switch on the board, I'd glance at the back window. I couldn't help it. That busted circle of rusted metal out past the fence started to take on a weight in my mind. And ever since the signal shifted from faint to clear, from distant to local, I knew I had to dig deeper. Christian didn't want to talk about it anymore. After that night, he clammed up. He'd wave me off when I brought it up, or pretend he didn't hear me. But he didn't deny it either. And that said plenty. So I took another route. The archives. The station didn't have an official library, or any kind of properly labeled storage, but there was a back room off the main hallway, marked records and faded tape, that I hadn't paid much attention to before. I had to shoulder the door open. The hinges groaned, and dust hung in the air. Inside were metal filing cabinets, cardboard boxes stacked unevenly, and piles of folders that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. I brought a lamp from the break room, set it on a stool, and started sorting through the mess. Most of it was exactly what you'd expect. Broadcast logs from past decades, list of music rotations, old commercials for car dealerships that probably didn't exist anymore. But the deeper I went, the weirder it got. Some folders had pages filled with what looked like sermons or transcripts, handwritten notes with phrases like, "all offerings accounted for," and "may the mouth stay full." I found an envelope filled with Polaroids of fruit. Not people. Fruit. Different melons, all cut open and labeled with dates. At first, I assumed it was part of a weird ad campaign. Maybe the watermelon company had started as a food brand or farm co-op. But then I checked the financial documents. There weren't any. I searched through old tax files, scanned every old letterhead and signature. The watermelon company never filed taxes. No EIN number, no payroll, nothing in any official state or federal records. It didn't exist as a business, not on paper. And yet, it owned things. I found purchase orders, actual stamped and signed ones, showing that the company had bought massive quantities of seeds. Specifically, watermelon. Thousands of them. Crates shipped in from different parts of the country. Some marked heirloom, some listed as untreated or non-commercial. There were dozens of orders over multiple years, all addressed to the station's physical address. I kept digging. One of the older logbooks, handwritten in green pen, had short notes listed under each week of programming. Some were normal, like adjust gain on mic 2, or replace light in booth. But others were stranger. Week 17. Feed her seeds. Week 25. No show tonight. One down the well. Week 31. Midsummer. Her teeth reach. I took a couple of pictures of what I found to think about them later. By then, it was just after 4 a.m. Christian came around the corner, still holding his mug from earlier. He looked half asleep, but then he saw me hunched over the files and stopped in his tracks. "You're still at it?" he said. I nodded and turned the notebook around so he could see the entry. I pointed to the phrase, "Feed her seeds." "What the hell do you think that means?" I asked. I stood up and gestured toward the stacks. The watermelon company, look, it's never filed anything. No taxes, no wages, no legal presence. But they made regular bulk orders of melon seeds, man, like giant quantities. They weren't running a station. I think they were running something else. He let out a slow breath at that and leaned against the wall. I waited. Finally, he said, "Okay, yeah, look, I didn't want to get into this, but you're not going to let it go, are you?" He rubbed his face with one hand. Then he looked at me and said, "The watermelon company wasn't a company. It was a front, a cult. That part's true. They didn't worship the mother in some poetic sense. They meant it literally. They believed the well behind the station was a mouth. A real one. Some sort of opening between our world and whatever they thought was on the other side. They thought it led to some kind of ancient being. Hungry. Powerful. They probably wanted to make a deal with it. They called it the Mother." I blinked. "Like capital M?" He nodded. I paced a little, trying to wrap my head around it. So they planted seeds around the well? I asked. Christian said they didn't plant them, but fed them to her as offerings. He must have seen the look of confusion on my face, so he continued. Well, they toss them down the well as offerings. Seeds, fruit, livestock. Rumors say they even tossed people. Newcomers, outsiders. People who wouldn't be missed, he said. Okay, that's really dark, man. Christian shrugged. That's what they believed. That if they kept the mouth full, the mother would bless the land. Keep it fertile and safe. Their broadcasts were like prayers. They were calling out to other followers to send more and to bring more. I stared at him. And the station's still here. He nodded his head. But the cult is gone, I asked. As far as I know, the place changed hands a few times, eventually got bought out and turned into a regular station again. No one's talked about the early years, he said. I looked back at the stack of papers. So you knew all this and what, just never brought it up? He shrugged and said something about not thinking it was important. Plus, unlike me, stories like that gave him the creeps. Then I gave him a small smile. You know this is peak Arizona behavior, right? He rolled his eyes. I mean it. Who starts a radio cult in the middle of nowhere, worships a fruit-eating eldritch being, and then just disappears? I said, holding up the photo of the notebook page. Apparently the people who hired us, Christian muttered. I glanced back toward the window, just barely able to make out the edge of the well beyond the fence. Unbeknownst to me, finding out about my employer's cult origins wasn't the weirdest thing that happened to us that month. Far from it. I didn't stop checking the well after that. Every shift around the same time, I'd glance out the side window just to make sure nothing had changed. It became a habit. A nervous tick I didn't even think about anymore. Christian noticed, of course. He stopped asking about it, though. I think he figured he wouldn't change my mind. And he was right. We both knew something was going on out there. The only difference was that I wanted answers. And then one night, the AM show got interrupted. We were live. I was talking about a string of recent UFO sightings reported near Interstate 89. A couple truckers had submitted the same story on different nights. Bright lights near the cliffs, hovering low, flickering like broken headlights. I had a few call-ins lined up. Christian was going through the log sheet. It was normal, comfortable. Then the console glitched. The live indicator blinked out for a second. The automation system froze, and an override message flashed on the screen. One I'd never seen before. Auto switch engaged. And then just like that, the audio changed. A woman's voice filled the room, but not someone either of us recognized. It didn't sound like a caller or a recorded track. It wasn't even in English at first. She was speaking slowly, like each word took effort. There was a weird distortion to it, like her voice was traveling through water. Christian leaned forward, staring at the board. What is it? I didn't know. The voice kept going for another 30 seconds. Even as I tried my best to speak through it, while also trying to cut the live broadcast. I couldn't understand a single word, but the tone made my skin prickle. Then the dripping started. In the background, behind her words, there were soft splashes, something shifting in water. Like a large shape, moving just below the surface of a pool. And then, just before the broadcast ended, the woman switched languages. She started speaking English.
Children, come home.
As soon as she said it, the lights in the studio flickered and dimmed. Outside, something creaked. We both turned toward the window at the same time. It was the well. The metal cover had shifted. Not from wind or anything else we could see. It groaned like something had pressed against it from below. I took one step toward the window, squinting at the edge of the floodlight's reach. And then the metal lid buckled, blowing outward. A sharp, echoing clang cut through the air as the cover launched a few feet into the air and landed sideways in the dirt with a heavy crash. Dust kicked up around it. The sound rattled the window. Christian flinched so hard, his chair slid back across the tile. I didn't move. The cover spun for a second, then settled. Nothing happened at first, but then I saw movement. Fast, small shapes swarming over the edge of the well and spilling into the gravel. Spiders. Not just a few. Hundreds. A whole host of spiders, legions pouring out in waves, moving in tangled bursts over the rim and scattering across the dry ground like someone had kicked over a nest. Long legs, shiny black bodies. Some small, some big enough to make noise as they hit the dirt. They crawled over each other, tumbling forward like they were fleeing something behind them, or heading straight for us. "You seeing this?" I said, stepping back from the window. Christian didn't answer. I turned in time to see him already halfway down the hallway, heading for the break room. I snapped back to the board, hands shaking, and cut the live broadcast. My fingers slipped once, then found the switch. Mics off, input lines killed. No more audio going out. Just the music track running on a loop, faint through the muted monitors. Through the window, I saw Christian again, dragging the green garden hose from the side of the building with both hands. He cranked the valve hard, and water burst out in a wild arc. He didn't even wait for the pressure to settle. He sprayed directly at the ground near the door, where the spiders were already starting to crawl up the siding. The stream hit him hard. He swept it left and right, blasting the swarm backward. The spiders scattered, then regrouped, then scattered again. A few made it to the base of the door and clung there, but Christian didn't let up. Eventually, the ground was soaked, and the last of the spiders disappeared into the brush. Some vanished under the building. Some slipped between cracks in the concrete. The well was still open, uncovered and dark, but nothing else came out, at least for now. Christian shut off the hose and dropped it. Then he walked back inside without a word. Neither of us said anything the rest of the night. Well, we didn't speak for a while after that night. The well stayed open for 2 more days. We kept the blinds drawn, avoided looking out the back window, and stuck to just playing music. Nothing live, no calls, no AM show. The signal didn't come back, and no more spiders showed up. Eventually, someone, probably management, sent a guy to weld the cover shut. He didn't ask questions, just parked a white van behind the building, got out, and went straight to work. Took less than an hour. Weeks passed, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. There's more to this place. I know it now. KMCR was never just a radio station, not to the people who built it, not to the ones who ran it before us. It was something else entirely. A signal tower, a message board, Maybe even a feeding trough if the rumors are true. Whatever the mother is, whatever lives beneath that well, I don't think she's finished with us. Not by a long shot. That's why I haven't left. I've had every reason to walk. Most people would have bolted the moment the equipment started speaking back. Hell, I have seen lesser men pack up over bad drip coffee and faulty wiring. But something about this place, it has hooks in me. Like my dad always said, I am too curious for my own good. As for Christian, he's halfway gone. Has been ever since the spiders. He says it's not safe here, that it hasn't been for a long time. He says we're in over our heads. And I believe him. But I also think he's lying to himself. He wants to know what's going on just as badly as I do. He just doesn't want to be the one to look it in the eye when it shows up. So for now, he stays. And so do I. We sit behind the mics, night after night, playing music, killing dead air, waiting for the next piece to fall into place. Out here, nothing's certain, except that the signal keeps coming, and something out there is still listening. If you're out there, on a highway, at a truck stop, staring at the ceiling in some quiet motel room, I hope you're paying attention. These stories might sound strange, but they're real. We're living them. One night at a time. This has been Rory on the AM show, and you're listening to KMCR, out in the middle of nowhere.
Hey, huge thank you to all my patrons. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, there's a link in the description. I hope you enjoyed the story, and have a good night.